All right. Hello, everybody. It's the Meista for Brews and Tunes. I am incredibly excited and very honored today to be talking to the legendary John Gallagher of Raven. I'm incredibly honored to be chatting with you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
You are quite welcome, sir. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Why don't we start with kind of what's happening now with you, kind of what you're working on, what you've been doing this past year. What has John Gallagher been up to in this last crazy year that we've been living in?
Oh, well, I spent the first 6 months or so, well, it's probably 5 months in the UK with my girlfriend over there. So I got to see a wonderful lockdown in full force, which was not very entertaining.
Right.
So I just spent the time doing a lot of writing, which, you know, we've got a big cache of songs all set for the next record.
Oh, excellent.
Even though we haven't even yet got to tour with the most recent one. So that's, you know, half of the course, the way things have went with this. But there's that. And then when I got back here, I've got a box to my left here with about, I don't know, 25 VHS tapes, which are ADAT, one of the early digital formats. It's our live album from 1995, so I'm converting that into the computer with a view to doing a remix at some point, because somebody mentioned it, and when it was initially mixed, there was a lot of issues with out-of-phase guitars and pops, cracks in my voice as well. So without cheating per se, I think we can do a better job with the technology we have now compared to what we had then. So that's something that's back burner. We'll get that together.
Nice.
But we have a festival coming up on August 15th in Belgium, the Alcatraz Festival, which we've done a couple of times before, which is awesome. They always take great care of us. There's a good lineup, and looking forward to that. That'll be our first gig since February of 2019.
Wow.
That's insane. And then we are looking at a run in the States in October.
Oh, cool.
The details on that. So really looking forward to that.
Great. When will that be announced?
Well, there's a couple of dates kind of snuck out already in Chicago, and I think one in somewhere in Wisconsin outside of Milwaukee. But pretty soon, it's just negotiating, you know, whether we're taking an opening band or not. You know, just taking someone for the sake of taking someone is great for them, but it doesn't do us any favors usually. So we'll see.
Right.
And also just, you know, plotting the routing, because initially it was going to be 3 dates, which turned to 4, which turned to 10, and I just turned around and said, bugger this, let's do a proper tour, let's go. It's been too long, so
yeah,
try and do something. Keep us out of trouble. Or put us into it.
Right. That's excellent news. That's great. And you mentioned the last album, which I have right here, the Metal City, which kicks ass. Man, it's such a great record. I love it. It's what's so cool about it, I think, in many ways, and all your music, is that, and I don't even know how you do. I'm shocked. The energy that you and Mark have, I don't even know how. Like, just high intensity rock and roll. It's beautiful. It's so great.
It's deep. That's what it is.
Nice.
We were very, very happy with the way it turned out, and you know, it turned into this marathon pain in the ass. Because we'd taken about 5 years or so between the last 2 albums, and we didn't want to do it with this one. We wanted it to be quicker. Things dragged because we had a lot of touring with Extermination. We basically toured for about 3 or 4 years on it. So the idea was in 2017, yeah, we're going to do the record. And then, of course, Joe had his heart attack, and Joe's out of the band, and we get Mike in, and Mike's like, you know, we're doing new music. Yeah, here's some songs. We've got lots of songs. And we had an abortive, he did his drums at his studio at home, but we had an abortive recording session elsewhere, which kind of fell to pieces over a he said, she said type of nonsense. And we just said, you know what, this ain't working, scrap it, start over. And the idea was to do the recording at Mike's studio, but Mike was moving from New York to Los Angeles. So he got there and was building a studio, and it was going to take a few months, and it was like, okay. So we had a gig on the Monsters of Rock cruise and ran into Michael Wagner, our old, you know, mate and brilliant engineer producer, and said, Michael, we're doing a record, would you like to mix it? And he said, oh, absolutely, anything, you know, for you guys, definitely. I said, okay, great. So about a week after the cruise, he calls up and says, when you go into the studio to do this album? He says, well, he's building a studio. It's probably going to be 3 months at this point. He says, well, I'm going into the hospital next month for a major operation. And, you know, not to say I'm not coming out of it, but I prefer to get this done beforehand. And we're like, well, what are we going to do? He says, well, why don't you come to mine? Yeah, right, sure. He goes, no, come on, come down to Nashville. Let's do it. So 2 days later, we were in Nashville.
Nice.
And spent the next 2 weeks doing the guitars, the basses, the vocals, and the squeaky noises and all the silly stuff. And, you know, and Mike came down, and we had a great time. We had a really good time. It's always fun working with Michael. And, you know, he just gets great performances out of us. I was really happy with the vocals. And, you know, Mark took a lot of time getting his stuff together on that. But for some reason, I was just, you know, we did the basses one day, we did the vocals in about 2.5 days. We was just saying boom, 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 boom. Of course, I demoed everything 50 times before, and so
right.
I kind of knew what I was doing. It kind of helps. But, you know, initially, the idea was to have a punchy, not too long, in your face, 10 songs, listen to it, get freaked out, put it back on, you know, Montreux's first album, Van Halen, that type of boom, 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 smash in the face, you know, because Extermination was a good album, but it was a little long by maybe 1 or 2 tracks, I think. And it you know, maybe if you have, this is the album and these are extra tracks, it's, you know, psychologically works a little better, maybe, I don't know. But we just felt 10 songs, let's do it that way, short, sharp, shock, kick people in the face, as it were.
Yeah.
And, you know, the only consideration of the songs was that they would all kick ass, regardless of whatever kind of feel or, you know, dynamic was going on. And the great thing was we had so many songs, we could say, okay, what's a great opener? You know, what would follow that? What would follow that? And sequence it, almost pre-sequence it before we got into it. So we had a really good idea of how it was going to run. And because it's almost a lost art these days. You know, people will front load their album with like 3 or 4 great songs and the rest is a load of rubbish. We prefer to take people on a journey, even if it's, you know, like you're going off a cliff. But it worked out. It worked out really well. And then the other issue was the cover, which Mike had the idea for a cartoon cover, and we were like, yeah, let's go comic book. Let's do that. Everyone was chipping in ideas, you know, and we were running into these artists who, you know, they're artists. They're not graphic artists. They're artists. It's like, no, I'm paying you to do a job. I want X, Y, Z. He goes, no, well, why don't we have ABC? No, I don't want ABC. I want X, Y, Z. Right, I want a guy on the front cover that looks like me. Well, you know, that doesn't look like me. That doesn't look like Mark. That looks like the Hulk. Why couldn't you put Mark's face on that? And the guy wouldn't do it. So fired, next, fired. And we eventually got a couple of guys who, you know, listened and basically contributed good stuff. And, you know, and if we liked it, great. And, you know, it's a bit of a collaboration, but it's still a dictatorship. We're paying, we want it, you know.
Yeah. And it's a great cover.
It came together, like it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of content in there. And I got to do a little drawing on the ad page, all the little guitars and the extra specs and the headphones and all this. I drew all that nonsense. So that was a different thing for us, I think. And it just all tied in into this whole thing of, you know, the song Metal City was a great title for an album. And we just ran with that, you know.
Nice. Yeah, and it's fantastic. I think one thing that's notable, so you mentioned that you did some drawing on it, and you've actually in the past, you've done some graphics and some at least concept art for several albums.
Either responsible or guilty for some of the album covers and stuff. I've come up with quite a lot of them, one way or another. Famously, when we did Wiped Out, we had an atomic bomb exploding on the front cover, and Dave Wood from Neat Records absolutely refused to do that, saying it was in bad taste. And we would be like, but you've got Venom on your label. How can you have bad taste? Come on. That was the joke. But he locked me and Rob Hunter in a room and said, you've got 2 hours to come up with a cover. And that's how we ended up coming up with a crossed flash thing, which we thought was dreadful. But over the years, it's kind of iconic, and it, you know, it pops. So
yeah, very iconic.
Who knows? You know, who knows?
Yeah, I love it. It's great.
But it's always a challenge. But usually, if you've got one, you know, one thing follows the other. If you've got a good album title, and you've got something you can hang on to that, you know, and then everything will follow suit. Much in the same way as like writing a song or writing the lyrics, you need a good title. If you've got a good title or a concept, you can kind of build around that.
Nice. Is and maybe it's changed over the years, but you know, in terms of this album, and a lot of Raven albums, is it a collaboration? Is it you know, I know you're pretty much the main songwriter, but is it a collaborative process between you and Mark?
Yeah, I mean, Mark really stepped up on Extermination, and I think even more on this one, because I remember, you know, Joe was out and we were getting fill-in guys. We'd got like 4 dates in the States. We had one guy from Chicago do that show, and then Mike, who we didn't know, came in and did 3 shows, and we just said, we love you, you're great, let's talk after we do this European stuff. And we went off and did a gig in a festival in Sweden with the drummer from Annihilator, who's, I can't remember his name at the minute, he's going to kill me. But he did a great job. And then we got the guy from the opening band when we did this 11-day tour. But anyway, in between that, we were stuck in a hotel in Belgium for like 3 days. So me and Mark just like set up the gear and just wrote, bouncing ideas off each other. And we came up with, you know, like Battle Scarred. I'm trying to think what else. That was one of them. And a few of the others. He had some great riffs, and I had like the pieces that were missing, and vice versa. And we probably came up with like 4 or 5 of the songs out of that.
Yes.
But you know, I'd been writing like a crazy man before this. I had like 30, 35 songs.
Oh wow.
And they were good, and they're still good, and we're still, there's a list of them right there. We're still still going to be either revisiting or stealing bits from and what have you, because for this new one, I've already got like 23 so far. And wow, there's definitely an album in there immediately, but it's just nice to have the option to go, well, these two are like really fast songs, but I like this one better type of deal rather than, you know, this is what you've got. So,
Right.
that type of thing. I mean, you know, we got 3 more of the epic-y style things. I got a handful of more rock and roll things. And, you know, and then we have at least one song that was collaborative. After the early part of 2019, we went to Japan and then China, and then came back to LA and stayed with Mike for like a couple of weeks. And we did some video stuff and we did some writing. And we did a whole bunch of scratch stuff for another covers album for when that's eventually going to get finished off.
Oh, cool.
That to do. But yeah, we have at least one song, which is hilarious because when we were in China, we were given a meal that was a big bowl of chicken feet and heads and stuff. And we freaked out. So the scratch lyrics is chicken feet.
I love it.
It's not called that now, but it was pretty funny at the time. But that's a real great barn burner of a song. So yeah, that one's definitely going into the mix.
Nice.
But I'm excited. This album is going to be absolutely as strong, if not more so, and maybe just a hair more varied. We have a song called The Wreckage, which is almost like a dazed and confused blues song.
Oh,
it's very different for us, and it's got a lot of dynamics in it. And I hope that makes the cut. That's really cool. It's a different one. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, that's exciting. I can't wait to hear that. That sounds great. If you don't mind, I'd really like to go back in time a little bit and talk about kind of your early days, like how you originally got involved in music, you know, kind of what were your inspirations, you know, both you and Mark, like kind of how did you both get involved in music originally?
Well, we both grew up, well, some people say we didn't, but we started, put it that way, in Newcastle upon Tyne in the northeast of England. Very blue collar, you know, are you looking at me? I'll tear your face off type of place. And loved, you know, grew to love music. We went in 1971, 72 to Spain on holiday. And in the hotel, we had, you know, our meal, and then a band came and played. And this guy's playing guitar with like his teeth and behind his back. He was doing the whole Hendrix trip, which we had no idea about. And we're like, wow, what is this? I'm in the dark again. Hang on a minute. Ta-da, a little better. So, and then another place we went to, a band were playing, and we just were fascinated with the equipment and the people playing and all this. And we already were great fans of Slade and Sweets and Status Quo. So our first gig was at the Newcastle City Hall, and it was Slade with the sensational Alex Harvey band opening. And both those bands blew our minds and changed our lives singing that gig. It was just amazing. And, you know, one day we had this acoustic guitar we got in Spain that me and Mark were fighting over. I'd be tuning it down, trying to play bass lines. And him and Paul Bowden, the guy from down the street, walked in and said, we're going to form a band and you're going to play the bass. I'm like, okay. And that's literally how we started, without a clue what we were doing or anything. We could barely play. We got a guy, another friend, in on drums who couldn't really play drums, you know, borrowed the drums, what have you. And eventually, after going through drummer, we got a couple of good guys and started playing the clubs and the pub circuit. And, you know, by it got to, I mean, Paul left in 79, we got another guy in, it didn't work. And then we got Rob Hunter in, which changed everything. We went as a 3-piece. That was the big change. That made Mark blossom as a guitar player. It gave me so much more room to do stuff on bass. And of course, Rob could go crazy and be inventive. And we just loved the format. Then we played a gig in Newcastle at this little place called Bambra's Music Hall. And the manager of the Tigers of Pantang, who were a local band who just put a single out on Neat, which was doing great, came up and said, "Love the show, guys. Would you like to do a single for Neat?" We're like, yeah. So a couple of days later, we turned up, did a demo, and they loved it. And we did the Don't Need Your Money single, and our lives were pretty much changed ever from that.
Wow.
So in the space of about 3 months, we went from playing, Ashington Social Club to opening for Whitesnake or opening for Motorhead or opening for Iron Maiden and doing all that stuff, traveling around.
Wow. That's incredible. I would imagine that was, I mean, obviously that was the goal, but I would imagine that was a bit of a shock because, you guys were pretty young and
Yeah, you don't, I wouldn't say not so much we didn't appreciate it, but it all happened very quickly and we were just very focused on doing what we were doing and trying to make it better and we knew what our attributes were as a band in that we were, full of crazed energy and we liked pushing those buttons, getting the audience involved, throwing equipment around, just being nuts. And because that had been our calling card for years, playing the clubs, it was, the crazy band, So, and it's always gotten a reaction, and that's the main thing. There's nothing worse than getting no reaction. If you play a show and the crowd hate you, great, feed that.
Right.
Feed them, make them hate you more. But
yeah.
we'd paid our dues. We used to play these working men's clubs, and geographically, you've got Newcastle, and about 10 miles south, there's Sunderland. There's a huge, football, soccer rivalry between the two. So there was always our next, the boys from Newcastle, boo, 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 and they'd have beer mats, and we'd be playing half covers, half originals, and they'd put the beer mat up, and it would say, Smoke on the Water, Deep Purple, or Space Station Number 5. By Montrose, or more commonly, fuck off. So it was, tough. You play for tough audience, but that was the northeast of England, tough audience. But if they liked you, they were with you forever. And, we built a following up. We absolutely built a following up from that. And, the single came out to great reviews, and John Peel, the DJ on Radio 1, BBC, who was famous for just his show was playing new music. Here's a single by this guy, here's a single. His wasn't like, I don't like this or I like this. It was just, it's new, I'm playing it, you make your mind up. Right. So he plays Don't Need Your Money, and Ozzy Osbourne hears it and goes, who's these guys? I love this. I want them to open for me. So we got shoehorned onto 4 dates on the Blizzard of Oz first tour in England. We played Newcastle, Sunderland, Middlesbrough, and London down at the Hammersmith Odeon. And that was a huge deal for us too,
Yeah, that's incredible. That's amazing. That's really cool. So you started, with your live shows. I think anybody that knows Raven knows. You guys are high energy, like you are sonic and you do not stop moving to this day. I've watched footage of you from the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, and then you see, if you go to a show now, you guys are the same band. You are incredibly high energy.
Nothing much has changed.
Yeah. It's you're amazing to watch. And was that kind of a?
I think the intake of ibuprofen after the show may go up a little bit. That's about it,
Right. Was that kind of from the very beginning? Was that a?
Well, that's how we felt the music. When we were kids, we had the tennis rackets and we were jumping around the Slade and Status Quo. You put that was it 4,500 times off the Core Live album, like 25 minutes long. And we'd go to the Mayfair Ballroom in Newcastle, which was this wonderful venue. There was two big venues. That was one of them. And Friday, there'd be a band usually. Saturday, sometimes there'd be a band. They'd have the heavy metal disco, and everyone in there, 2,000 people, headbanging, air guitaring, 5 or 6 hours. I mean, we just took that and played instruments at the same time. We just put it together. Really.
Right.
You know, that's how we heard the music. When there's certain bands I saw, when you heard the music, you'd be like, oh my God, these guys are crazy. And then when I saw Motorhead and they could barely stand up, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You know, you expected them to be, you know, the Who.
Right.
We see the Who, and it was like, that's it. Pete Townsend, Keith Moon, Roger Daltrey, and yeah, Entwistle's not doing anything, but he's playing like a monster, you know.
Right.
So, yeah, those classic bands really, the little bits of footage and stuff we saw. I mean, we used to watch The Kids Are All Right, even when we were on tour in America on tour buses. We'd be like, I'm doing that one tonight. And he'd be coming up with like lumps on his head after, like, you know, heading the guitar across the stage or something.
Nice. I love it. That's great.
But you know, that's the you know, we're nothing really like them that much musically, but the energy and the aggression from a band like that, definitely.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's, you know, and I can't overstate this enough. I mean, yeah, you definitely, obviously had, you guys had and still do have that kind of energy, but you also have a musical prowess, and especially at that time, I think, which was very different from a lot of bands. You know, the hard rock scene, there was something different about you, which was what drew me to Raven. There was always, especially those bass lines, you got just some really killer bass lines, and I was always really drawn to that. And I was curious, like, who were the bass players you were listening to? Who were your inspirational?
Well, there was so many. There's so many, and I'm bound to miss some out. But I gravitated. I mean, I've always played guitar as well, but I gravitated to the bass and loved Jimmy Lee from Slade, who was a magician, basically. Yeah. Gary Thane from Uriah Heep.
Yeah.
John Wetton, who was in Uriah Heep and King Crimson and Family and, you know, Roxy Music. Chris Squire.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Geddy Lee. Greg Lake. Martin Turner. Stanley Clark. Back there. I really didn't hear Jacko until years later. So, but brilliant, absolutely brilliant. God, what's his name? From the Faces. Ronnie Lane.
Yeah.
Phenomenal player. Andy Fraser from Free. Unbelievable player. So smart, so clever. John Entwistle. And, you know, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And I listened and learned and stole from here, there, and everywhere. And, you know, I wanted to do bass parts that were musical and added. And when we went to a 3-piece, kind of got to. There's only 2 ways to go. You play super boring, you know, when it's always like, oh, it all drops out when the guitarist starts soloing. Right. It never drops out when we play, when the guitarist starts soloing. That's usually when it starts getting more exciting and more stuff happens, because then the onus is on the drummer and the bass player to make it interesting, you know. But yeah, we've only got the 3 guys and 2, you know, note instruments, as it were. So you've got to be intelligent and, yeah, either your arranging or even your improvisation and just trying to do different, you know, not playing unison all the time. Break it out. And, you know, we do all these, you know, passing harmonies where he's going down and I'm going up, or if it's a harmony part you would normally do on a guitar, 2 guitars. he'll play the regular, and I'll play the harmony on the bass, which gives it a totally different feel.
Yeah.
So you just change it up and try different stuff and see what works. You know? And at this point, it's almost second nature. He'll do something, and yeah, I'll play it in fourths below it, just to try. That's how, you know, like When Worlds Collide has this insane riff.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you got the guitar, one of his guitars right here. You know, what's it? Can't even remember the riff. Oh God, I put myself in a box here. Anyway, the bass line goes. That's it. The bizarre chord thing, and then the bass is going. Mixes it up anyway.
Yeah.
And it's just trying to put, rather than playing the same thing, trying to play two halves of something to make a bigger whole, you know. And a lot of what we heard in like some of, especially the live Who stuff.
Yeah.
Where they would be playing, you know, Entwistle would just be playing around the riff.
Right.
And then would hold the riff down. And, you know, the live Rush stuff like the jam parts in Working Man and By Tour, stuff like that, you know. Yeah. That all went in.
Cool. And you know, I some of your live solo, like you'll do a bass solo, but you play it more like a guitar solo. It's not, it's really interesting the way you play your bass solos. Yeah, like your approach is very, for lack of a better term, but it's very guitar driven, it sounds like. I mean, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, sonically, I'm playing with massive amounts of distortion and, you know, tremolo bar and,
yeah,
you know, all that good stuff. And that again just sprung from initially not wanting us to do, you know, usually on a lot of the new wave of British heavy metal singles and stuff that come out, you know, there'd be like a break and it's just the guy playing the same bass line, like with some clanky, horrible tone, like he's hitting a piece of metal with another piece of metal.
Right.
Dang, 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 dang. I was like, I don't like that. I want something big, fat, round, you know, but with a lot of middle and rasp and edge to it. And you know, I like to play solos, and you play solos on any instrument, and playing, you know, just playing, you know, something daft like, where have I got a bass? There's a bass hiding here somewhere. Of course, it would happen to be the 8 string.
Oh, nice.
Well, you know, just going to. That's not a solo. That's just soloed. You know. All that nonsense. Fiddling on with that.
Nice.
So, yeah, and it's, you know, somebody mentioned this the other day. He said, "Oh, you guys were on tour with Metallica." I said, "No, they were on tour with us."
Yeah, I think that's it. Right? Yeah, that, in fact, that was their first tour, right?
It must have been amazing. You had Cliff Burton. I said, "Yeah, Cliff was great. Cliff was amazing." I said, "But to toot my own horn, in 1977, I had a Perspex see-through bass that I used to play with a fuzz wah pedal and a violin bow and play solos."
Yeah.
So, you know, we were kindred spirits in as far as that's concerned, you know. Right. So, yeah, but it's just been a natural part. I mean, you'd have these equipment failures on the early gigs, and like, "Oh, quick, fill in." "All right, I'll play a 20-minute bass solo, no problem."
Yeah, I think that's an important note to make, is that, if people don't know, is that the very first time Metallica ever toured, they opened for Raven in America.
Yep.
And it was, I think,
1983.
83. Yeah, yeah.
Kill 'em all for one tour. And
Yeah.
we'd sit and trade, riffs and ideas and chords. And yeah, Cliff was a great musician. He was a fun guy. He was an old soul on young shoulders, very much so. So there was depth there, and he knew what he was doing. He really did.
Yeah.
It was a very, very sad loss. And that hit us really weird because I'd never known anybody who died. Other than my grandmother when I was with 5 or something. So that was a weird dynamic, to have someone that you'd had fun with and hung out with a bit, and they weren't there anymore. It was really strange. So and that's someone who, we were, hanging out with them on a tour for like 6 weeks, 8 weeks. So how they handled it, I have no concept.
Yeah.
It's a terrible thing to go through when you're young, to have to deal with the loss or something like that, and in that high-powered environment that they were in, right, not easy.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. In terms of the kind of, the whole new wave of British heavy metal, did you have a sense at that time that you were part of something really big, or was it just, we're just doing our thing? Or was there kind of a sense in England at that time, like, holy shit, this is big?
No, it was really very much we're just doing our thing. You knew there was a lot of young bands, and we could figure out pretty quickly it was the same as what had happened to us. They'd been around for a few years. They played the music they liked because they liked the music. They weren't initially out there looking to be superstars or get a deal or whatever. They would just play the music they liked. And that's why, particularly the first tier of all those bands, they're all totally, utterly different. They have almost nothing in common other than passion and energy. None of them were the same. And I was talking about this in an interview yesterday, funnily enough, and the over categorization of music that we've got to deal with now.
Yeah.
The symphonic, death metal, grindcore, ultra black death, whatever the hell you want to call it, that nonsense started when they went to the new wave of British heavy metal, and they tried to put and it's more of an era. But some people go, oh yeah, it's like a new wave of British heavy metal riff. It's like, there really isn't no such thing. Come on.
Right.
There's one or two riffs have cropped up here and there, but it really doesn't match. Raven weren't like Venom, weren't like Saxon, weren't like Iron Maiden, weren't like Def Leppard, weren't like Angel Witch, weren't. They've all had their own take on it, as it were.
Yeah.
And that was cool. I thought that was incredible. And that lasted for quite a while. And then you started getting, give it 10, 15 years, everyone started copying.
Right.
Whoever they loved, to say, I'm a great Metallica fan, and I've got a band, and our band sounds like Metallica. So
yeah.
That's real useful and intelligent.
All right.
And because I think they weren't broadening what they were listening to. We listen to everything. Mark's more of a purist rocker, but he listened to a lot of different stuff. And, I'm out there listening to Yes, Genesis, ELP, all that stuff. The impossible to play stuff, trying to figure that out. But you mix and match. And our idea was always to have an exciting, good song with left turns in it. And like give a bassist a feel, okay, yeah, I'm in with, oh, what's that? Oh, needles in haystacks here, there, and everywhere, So that informed our writing, where we'd have You know, I was listening to a very, very, very early demo from '78 that we finally found. And it's pretty funny because we kind of backloaded all the crazy stuff. It was verse, chorus, freak out. And then we tried to incorporate it more into verse, chorus with little freak outs through instead. Made more sense.
Nice. So those were old demos. Do you have any intention to ever release those demos from those early?
I just got that stuff digitized, and it's a long process. We are trying to get the rights back to all our old stuff, and one or two of the companies, even though by law they're supposed to, they're not releasing certain parts of that. So it's possibly going into a class action suit because they're doing the same thing to a few other people. Gotcha. But you know, in a perfect world, I would love to do a 40th anniversary Rock Until You Drop and put stuff like that on. And we've got other demos and stuff. We've got lots and lots of content, put it that way, for almost all of those albums. And in the last couple of years, with a mind to that, I've been collating stuff here and there, photographs and magazine articles and tapes and, you know, bootlegs, demo tapes, all that good stuff. So it will happen.
Cool.
I don't know if it's going to happen for this year, but I will make inroads even if we end up having to pay the piper just to get the rights musically to do that. We're getting the publishing back, which is nice. That's definitely
great. That's very good.
So that does mean finally that if, you know, any of this stuff is selling, we'll actually make more money on it. But I get kind of depressed when I see somebody's licensed all for one for like the 19th time. And it's just the same thing, but on a different color vinyl. It's like, I'd like to do it box set and do it right.
Yeah.
But it'll happen. We'll get there.
Yeah, I think I that would be great. I mean, and I can't overemphasize this enough. I mean, I think, you know, Raven is one of the most important heavy metal bands in the history of heavy metal. Like, I think you guys have, you inspired the entire thrash metal scene, you know, really. I mean, there are a lot of bands that were part of that, you know, that inspiration, but I think Raven just, one, in the energy, that, you know, that high energy, that attack, you know, that guitar attack, that bass attack, like just how fast you guys were, that whole speed metal vibe. I mean, yeah, I think you're incredibly important to especially the early California thrash metal scene, the New York thrash metal scene, like incredibly important to that, all of that. And just in your own right, you're just an amazing band. I mean, and putting out amazing music for 40 years.
And that was another thing that was a feather in our cap. We knew when we had the songs, because we had the songs before Mike joined. And once he added his insanity and, you know, adrenaline, it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
We've really got, the bar was raised, the bar was kicked over the fence at that point. We knew we were going to blow people's minds with it big time, because a band that's been together like we have for 47 years.
Wow.
And I can't get my brain around that concept, but it's been that long. But usually anyone that's been together that long, they've kind of trading on past glories big time, and they may be a bit of a shadow of what they used to be. And we're definitely not that.
Not at all.
We've got great new material that stands up to anything we've done before, and we're moving forward. And it's a very exciting time to be in the band, you know.
Yeah, I would say, just like you said, the music you're producing now is, it's incredibly high energy. It's, if I didn't know it was Raven, I would like, oh, who's this new young band? These guys are this is great. This is really fast. This is cool. Or if, you know, if somebody told me this was, you know, this album right here, oh, this is Raven's second album from, you know, 1983. Like, oh, okay, cool. Because it doesn't sound, I mean, I was, no offense in any way, but if, yeah, when you listen to this and somebody says, oh yeah, these are guys in their 60s, like, what?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but we all had that, you know, when we were kids, people who were 60, they were done. They were ready to die.
Right.
We're not ready to die. We're you know, 60 is the new 30.
And yeah, still kicking ass.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, you know, as you mentioned earlier, you know, with the tour coming up, yeah, anybody out there that can get a chance to see you guys live definitely has to get on board and check you out, because it's fascinating to watch you guys play. It's mesmerizing. I mean, just, you know, I mean, it's an experience. It's beautiful. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we are, you know, we're totally committed, out of our minds crazy, but we have a laugh and we have a great time, and the audience is in on the joke. You know,
Yeah.
that's the great thing. We, you know, we give out the energy, they give it back, and it's always fun. We you know, and you know, no gig's exactly the same as the other, and we feed off each other, and you know, Mike is just dovetailed right into that whole improvisation, make it up on the spot, stop a song dead, go to another song. Just, you know, we try to challenge each other with that kind of stuff, and it's worked. I mean, that live album we put out, which was initially a bit of a stopgap because we were having so much issues trying to get this album together. We said, it's been too long. Do we have anything live? And Mike had been given a memory stick by some guy when we were on the tour opening for Udo in Europe in, when was that? Late 2017, I think, yeah. And listen to this, he says, you got to hear this thing. It's like unbelievable. My bass cut out for 5 seconds because I broke a string. I never break strings, but I do sit in the dock. Come on, there we go. So we had to do a quick and dirty fix on that, and that was it. Everything else is as it was, and we were like rabid dogs on it or so. It's like, it's so out of control, but it's fun, and that's the essence. That's the spirit of what we're doing. Totally.
You've played, speaking of touring, you've played literally hundreds of shows, if not more. So maybe this is a really loaded question, but are there any shows that stand out? Anything that, like, any memories where you're like, wow, that was an incredible show?
Oh yeah, there's lots and lots. I mean, obviously there's all those kind of milestone things like your first show, or the first show where you played at the Mayfair, where we opened for a band called the Motors, who were like a new wavy band who were pretty popular, and we actually went down better than they did, and we were playing half covers at the time.
Wow.
It's ridiculous. We played with the Stranglers when the punk thing was going. That was insane. So that sticks out. Playing the City Hall for the first time, which was opening for Girls' School. Those shows playing with Motorhead, Whitesnake, Iron Maiden, all those things, they all stick out. The first shows in Italy, when we first came out of the country, in Holland for the first time, going to America for the first time, playing Brazil for the first time. You know, there's still an awful lot of firsts for us to do, so there's so many of them. You know, that tour when we had Metallica with us, there was some killer shows on that. There really was. The one in Chicago was like out of control. The Bay Area shows were insane. So yeah, and as I'm a relatively straight edge kind of character, not following that credo, but you know, I almost never drink, and I've never done any of the stupid stuff. The memory works, so I remember most of it.
That's good.
Most of it, yeah.
Nice. I love it. That's great. So I don't want to keep you all night. And you just mentioned that you don't really drink much, but so my blog is Brews and Tunes. So I pair craft beer with heavy metal bands, heavy metal albums. So my last question for you is, and you don't have to address the beer part, but so I always ask anybody that I interview, you know, it's a Saturday night, you're hanging out at your house, you know, you just finished a tour, just finished an album, whatever. What album are you spinning, and what craft beer are you drinking? Or you don't have to be drinking beer, but you know what album are you spinning? What's the album right now that you got on the player?
Right now, I'm fighting between the old ones. I'm fighting between Slayed Alive and Relay by Yes.
Oh, nice.
Totally 180 off each other. So
yeah,
that covers a lot of sonic real estate for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
And drinking. If I was a beer drinker, I'd probably get a good old Newcastle Brown Ale.
Oh, there you go.
So I can drink and I can go, that's good, that's bad, but I have no interest in knocking back 15 of them, you know?
Right.
that has no appeal. And where I come from, that was a religion. People would drink English pints, 10 of them a night, 5 or 6 nights a week.
Jeez.
So I go back there now, and all these guys who had hair, they're all bald.
Right.
I'm like, it's something in the beer.
I love it. I love it. Well, John, this has been a pleasure speaking with you. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much. I'm super excited to hear the new music, hopefully in the next year or so.
That's the plan. We want to try and get this nailed together and either record it or at least get started on recording later this year, and hopefully get it together to bring it out the fall of next year.
That would be great.
I hope so. I hope so. I want it done because we want to just press forward.
Yeah.
And there's 5 years between album stuffs for the birds. We've got too much music for that. We'll end up with stockpiles of, you know, digging through 300 songs. I need to get some of this stuff out.
Yeah. We need to hear it.
Exactly.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This was
welcome, man.
a pleasure. Have a great evening, sir.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Bye.